Hello and welcome back to the kitchen for another video, and today is slightly different. It's like a story episode. Let me tell you a story, but first I want to introduce you to my new mug. I got a few in Las Vegas. He's Groot. Groot is my new companion, and I love making chocolate coffee with him. And if you have not experienced chocolate coffee, this is my new weakness. It's 0-calorie chocolate espresso stuff that you pour into your coffee, and it is mind-blowingly delicious. So that is one of my many secrets, and it's delicious. And Groot tastes delicious when it's in it. But back to today's story time. So, on today's story time, I wanted to discuss low body fat and the reality of cutting. So, the truth is, my diet has been tailored to me because I have a very sweet tooth. So, most of my diet is literally sweet. And that's the thing that people struggle with. It's like, like I get it so often. It's kind of like, what is your diet? And even if I told you what my diet is, you probably wouldn't follow it because it's not tailored for you. And I think it's so important when you're cutting or just dieting, even if you're not getting on stage, to have a diet that you can follow, because there's no point in me telling you what I eat and you can't follow it because you don't have a sweet tooth. If you've got a salty tooth, you're not going to want to eat what I eat. So there's so many different factors when it comes to cutting. And I think number one, you need to identify what foods that you like and you can eat and sustain in order to cut, okay? And when it comes to cutting is 100% about discipline. It's about mindset, it's about determination. It's easier if you're cutting for a specific reason, like getting on stage or a photo shoot, rather than just for shits and giggles, especially if you're doing an extreme cut to get to a very low body fat. Even if you're not cutting to the extreme, you're just on a diet, discipline is everything. You've got to have the mindset to know you're going to be hungry. If you are cutting for stage, if you are cutting to be extremely lean, there is a high possibility that you are going to be hungry whilst you are cutting. You're going to start to get some cravings, and that's depends on how you're approaching the diet. So when I used to cut for bodybuilding, it was so restrictive that my body was deficient in a lot of micronutrients, and so I was craving a lot of different things. When I cut now, I have cravings not for a specific thing because I've covered all my micronutrients. My body is getting all the minerals and vitamins that it needs. So the only thing it's craving is sustenance. It's craving food, but I'm not having a specific craving that you would have if you were deficient in something. So your body is smart. You're like a pregnant woman who's there's a fetus growing inside of her, and she might start craving a specific dirt outside, or eating grass or something like that. We've all heard the stories of pregnant women craving specific things, and that's because your body is smarter than you realize, and it's telling you, I need copper or zinc or something, and I know it's in that dirt in that corner, so you're going to eat it, kind of thing. And the same thing happens, and that is that is one of the reasons a lot of people are obese, is because they're eating junk food, which is empty calories, lacking in micronutrients, lacking in the vitamins and the minerals that the body actually needs. And so you eat these empty calories, it doesn't fill you because it's not actually giving you the sustenance and the nutrition it needs. And so it says, I'm still hungry. And so you eat more and you eat more, but you're eating the wrong things which aren't filling you. And so you keep on eating. And that's one of the reasons that you could be overweight. Obviously, I'm not going to go into it. That's a completely different thing. But when you are cutting, it is imperative that you try to cover as many micronutrients as you can, getting as many vegetables as you can. Obviously, fruit, depending on what you're doing, could be limited, but you still want to get in as many micros as you possibly can. So a greens in the morning, a fruit in the morning, you want to make sure you're getting everything in. So that is step number one. Okay, so every single morning, if I'm cutting, I have a scoop of greens and I have a scoop of a mixed blend fruit. You also want to make sure that you're covering all your bases when it comes to vitamins and minerals, because depending on what route you're going down, again, you could be lacking in omegas, you could be lacking in vitamin B. Vitamin B is really important for energy and a lot of other things. And you often get it through the dirt on the vegetables. So if you can get organic, don't wash the vegetables, because that dirt right there will help with vitamin B. That is step number one to cutting, is trying to get as many things as you possibly can to sustain your body, so that even though you're depriving it of calories, you're giving it everything it needs to function. Okay, and that is so important, to actually feed the body and give it all the nutrients that it needs. Then one less thing to tackle, your body is still healthy in the regard that you're giving it what it needs. Now it's just the mental headspace of, can I fucking do this? Can I stick to my diet? And if you're not in the right mindset, if you're not in the right corpus mentis to actually focus and deal with the hunger and deal with sticking to your diet, you will struggle, and more than likely you will fail. So that is the next step, and the most important thing to remember is dieting is 100% mental. I personally like to diet on very, very, very low fat and lots of carbs and lots of protein. And for me, I love fruit, I love sweet things, so I keep rice in my diet, I keep pineapple in my diet, I keep bananas in my diet, I keep so many sweet things in my diet. And that's generally what you do, is you tend to cut out one of the macros, or you just manipulate the macros. So one of the most common ones to do is keto, where you keep your fats high and you keep your protein moderate and your carbs are pretty much non-existent. Now keto is like 20 grams of carbs per day. That's kind of like where you're at, and then very, very high fat, and then moderate amount of protein. Obviously you have to remember, if you are in keto or pushing for keto, that if your protein is too high and you're struggling to get into keto, that's because your protein is too high and it's still converting to glucose in the body, and so you can't actually get into keto unless you drop that protein a little bit more. And keto I would recommend for people who have a salty tooth. So because the exciting thing about keto is you get bacon and butter and fattier cuts of meat, and that is a very wholesome and filling way to diet, and I highly recommend it for people who have a salty tooth. Now I don't, I have a sweet tooth, and so instead of dropping the carbs as you would with keto, I drop the fat, and I literally drop the fats to marginal. My calories will vary as depending on when I am where I am in the cut. So they may start higher, and obviously they'll work down as I get closer and closer to my stage weight. One, you do that because you weigh less, so therefore you need to eat less. And two, because you're trying to get to the extreme amount of leanness and low body fat, so you don't want to just drop your calories. Okay, you want to drop your calories as little as possible in the beginning, and then only when you hit a plateau, change your calories again, and only when you hit another plateau, change your calories again. You don't want to drastically go from like eating 4,000 calories to 1,000 calories, and that is a big mistake. And it's one of those, that's where counting calories, or at least knowing where your calories are at, is important, because then okay, I'm currently eating 3,500 calories when I'm bulking, and I'm just going to cut to 3,000 to start. Okay, and then you want to add as few changes into your diet or activity levels at a time, because there's more ammunition to play with. So if you're at 3,500 calories, you drop it to 3,000. When you hit a plateau, you keep it at 3,000, but you add in more cardio. When that cardio no longer works, then you can drop your calories a little bit more. And when that doesn't work, then you can add in more cardio, and you can play around between the two. You never want to just do extremes, going from I'm eating 3,500 calories and not doing any cardio, which I don't recommend. I do recommend you do cardio no matter whether you're building or cutting. Cardio is your friend. Healthy heart, we like cardio. Not in excess, but a little bit of cardio is good for you, okay? And allows you to eat more. So you can start at 3,500 calories with, let's say you were doing 10 minutes of cardio. Now you can do 3,500 calories and you can do 20 minutes of cardio, okay? You don't want to go from 3,000 calories to an hour of cardio, or 3,000 calories to 1,000 calories, and even worse, an hour of cardio, because then your body's just going to go, what the fuck are you doing? And you also don't have wiggle room, because if you've dropped from 3,000 to 1,000 calories, where are you going to drop from when you've hit a plateau at 1,000 calories? Okay, you've got nowhere to go. You can't drop to 500 calories, because that's just fucking stupid. You want to play and do it slowly, adding things in, okay? I had to kind of edit and reshuffle, because whilst I was editing, I decided I would retake this little part of the video, and I wanted to reveal exactly what I eat, but I didn't want to give you exact quantities, whereas I had originally, and I decided to take that out because there's one thing that a lot of people don't take into consideration, and that is protein to body weight. Now, in theory, you should be doing your protein according to your lean body weight, which is sometimes quite hard to work out. But regardless of whether you weigh 100 kilograms or 150 kilograms or 60 kilograms, your protein should reflect how much you weigh. And so obviously my protein will vary depending on how much I weigh and what my goal is. So for example, when I am doing an extreme cut, my protein will be a lot higher than when I am, for example, in maintenance, or I am in building, because there's no need to protect the muscle mass, so there's no need to go to such high levels of protein, in my personal opinion. So my protein will vary according to, one, my body weight, and two, my goals. And my protein should not be your protein intake, especially if you're a guy, and especially if you're a girl who has less muscle mass than me and weighs less than me, or vice versa, has a lot more muscle mass than me and weighs substantially more than me. Like, I'm currently weighing, I think, like 140 pounds. If you convert that into 1.5 pounds of protein per pound of body weight, that is quite a bit of protein, which is where I got to towards the end of my cut. Generally, my protein sticks around 1 to 1.2 grams of protein per pound of body weight, and that is substantially enough for me. And I don't want someone who weighs like 40 or 50 kilograms having the same amount of protein as someone who's weighing 60 kilograms and the same amount of protein as someone who weighs 80 kilograms eating less protein than they need. So I decided I was not going to give you exact quantities of my protein intake because that should not be something that you copy. Right, so with that preamble about protein and everything else, I will give you my exact cutting diet. Now, this is the very, very extreme cutting diet that I will work towards as I cut, and it's not something that I will straight up go into. Obviously, when I start cutting, I have a lot more substance, a lot more carbs. Obviously, I'm not playing around with a lot of fats, and one thing you should note is there are no additional fats. So if I mention vegetables, I'm boiling or steaming or oven roasting in a dry pan, or just sticking them in the microwave and blanching them in some water, and that is the only thing I add. And salt, pepper, garlic, spices and herbs that don't have sugar attached to them, I'm all for that. I just don't add additional oils because obviously that's additional calories, number one, and number two, I'm sticking to a low fat diet, which is my go-to when I cut because mentally I can stick to it as opposed to a keto diet. So yes, and another thing to take into consideration before I get to my diet again is that one that a lot of people struggle with is a low carb diet, but not keto. So you're kind of like, you're not in keto yet, but you're still on a very, very low carbs, and so you feel lethargic, you feel really run down. So if you are literally doing like low carb, I would suggest just doing keto, because there's no point in doing low carb where you're like eating 50-60 grams of carbs and you're just outside of keto, and then you're just really feeling like shit all the time and lethargic all the time because you're not in keto, but you're not actually giving your body enough glucose and energy to push yourself throughout the day. So you might as well go into keto and then just bump up your fats and drop your carbs, and that will help. So that is another recommendation. So what do I eat when I'm extreme cutting? Right, so meal 1 and meal 3 are exactly the same. They're eggs, they're rice, and they're between 100 and 200 grams of fruit. Now, fruit will vary according to the seasonality, according to what's available to me. If I'm traveling and I can't get access to a lot of fruit and a lot of variety, I will do canned fruit in fruit juice, not syrup. So that is meal 1 and 3. Simple, and that is my only fats for the entire day. Yes. Those are my only fats. Meal 1 and meal 3 are whole eggs, okay? With rice and fruit. The rice can vary starting at like 200 grams, dropping down to as little as 80 grams, depending on where in the cut I am. And the fruit, again, as I said, will start and can vary from 200 grams to as little as 80 grams as well. I don't have a preference of fruit. You can do anything: bananas, apples, berries, pineapple. I tend to go for more tropical fruits like pineapple, papaya. I love them. I grew up in South Africa, so those are my kind of go-to. Though in countries like the UK, they're not the yummiest. So, if I could, I would do berries rather, because they're better in the UK and more seasonal. Then, meal 2 and meal 4 are exactly the same. It's egg white, a piece of fruit, and vegetables. So again, very simple. Again, as I said, no oil on the vegetables. Steam it, blanch it, eat it raw. Again, I don't have a preference with the vegetables. Can be butternut, as long as I'm not doing sweet potato or yams or something like that. I am more than happy to eat anything from beans to peas to broccoli to cauliflower, tomatoes, even though they're a fruit. and anything else. So I'm getting in as many different macros as possible, along with another piece of fruit. Generally that's like an apple or a banana at that point, and then I have my egg whites. So I'm getting in my protein, making sure I'm getting in enough protein, and I'm getting in my macros and my variety, and I'm getting in all my macros generally from fruit and vegetables. I do obviously keep to having apple cider vinegar, my greens in the morning, my creatine in the morning, unless I decide to cut the creatine to help to dry me up even more. And I did that on my last cut with the traveling, and I think that did help me drop probably a little bit more water, though in theory the creatine causes water retention submuscularly, so within the muscle. I don't know what the right terminology is. I'm sure I just fucked that up, but whatever the case is, I did drop it, and though in theory it's not necessary because it's within the muscle and it shouldn't cause water retention underneath the surface of the skin, which is the only thing you're really worried about when it comes to bodybuilding and how you're looking. You want that water in the muscle, you want the fullness in the muscle, just obviously just not under the top layer of skin. I remember at one point when I was still bodybuilding, the one coach heard my diet, and he said you shouldn't be eating eggs because they cause water retention, and you shouldn't be eating dairy because they cause water retention. And it's one of those, I took his advice and I never used it, because for me, I have always done this diet and this has always worked for me. Obviously it has changed over the years, I have fine-tuned it over the years, but this is my diet. So as you've seen, it's eggs, it's more eggs. I generally use egg white powder for the egg white only meals, or you can get the liquid egg whites, depending. I know a lot of people struggle with egg white powder because when you reconstitute it, it has a weird texture, but I kind of use that texture to make like a meringue, so I get the nice sweetness from it. So that is my kind of way of making it sweet, and I use the banana or the apple to really sweeten it up. So that's 4 of my meals. The other 2 meals tend to be either fat-free, sugar-free yogurt, or a fat-free, sugar-free casein powder, which I mix with just water, and sometimes add a little bit of fruit to it depending on where I am in the diet. Or I do fat-free, sugar-free cottage cheese, which I mix with a little bit of stevia, and obviously I found these 0-calorie things, and this really works well mixed in with like your fat-free, sugar-free yogurt and that sort of thing. So that is my last meal for the day. I generally go with something slow release, like the cottage cheese or a yogurt that has casein in it, or just, you know, casein. If you mix casein with just a tiny bit of water, it like turns into a chocolate mousse, which, you know, again just helps. And when I'm earlier on in my prep, I smush up a banana, add that in, and you can also freeze that to make a kind of yogurt, not yogurt, like an ice cream, which you can eat as well. So it's kind of like manipulating your food to make it feel, one, like it's more substance. You know, like I remember at one point my one meal was like 30 grams of cream of rice with 10 grams of almond butter and 1 serving of whey protein. And I would literally put like a liter of water with the cream of rice, and cook it to like a pudding like consistency, just to get the volume in, to make me feel like I was eating more. So that is my diet, beginning and end, when it comes to cutting. And a lot of people will probably say that is not a good diet, yada yada yada, but I'm getting in my fruit, I'm getting in my vegetables, and I'm getting in my protein, and for me it works. So whatever diet you have, stick with it and make sure it's a diet that you can maintain long term, because that's all that really matters. You know, make sure you're healthy, make sure your gut's healthy, make sure you're getting in all your macros, and make sure you get in enough protein, protect your muscle mass when you are cutting, especially when you get to the nitty gritty of extreme cutting for stage.